Some days life delivers the kind of moment you've dreamt about for years, yet it still hurts in ways you never expected. My name is Tiffany Gordon, and at 36, I found myself standing beneath the bright lights of the University of North Carolina at Charlotte Auditorium, a master's degree in law trembling in my hands. That IT was supposed to be the greatest evening of my life, the reward for 4 long years of coffee-fueled nights and weekends sacrificed to a single dream, proving I could build a future on my own terms. The applause swelled, the cameras flashed, yet my eyes searched through the rows of families for only 2 faces: Mom and Dad, Deborah and Edward Gordon. There they weren't, in the very seats they had promised to fill. 3 empty chairs stared back. That silence in the crowd was louder than any cheer that I had planned for this day, the way some people plan weddings. I'd sent them the date, the time, even a map marked in bright red ink. When Mom said, "We're so proud of you, Tiff," her voice had that rushed tone she used when she wasn't really listening. A few days later, her text came. "We can't make it, sweetheart. Shannon's throwing a party. It's important." Important. More important, apparently, than the end of my 4-year climb. While I collected my diploma, my sister Shannon, ever the star of their orbit, was hosting a celebration for landing a new event planning contract. And my parents were smiling at photos of custom floral centerpieces instead of their daughter on stage. I had told myself that maybe this degree would finally make them see me, finally erase that invisible gap between Shannon and me. But that night proved me naive. When the ceremony ended and the crowd thinned, my phone started buzzing in my purse. A text from Mom popped up first. "We need to talk urgently." Then I noticed it. 30 missed calls from Dad, all time-stamped within the hour. My pulse quickened. That gnawing instinct whispered something was horribly wrong. I couldn't have guessed then how quickly everything was about to collapse. For 10 years I'd been building a life in Charlotte, in a modest 1-bedroom apartment close enough to downtown that I could walk to my tiny law firm, Harper & Stone. It wasn't glamorous by any measure. Long hours of paperwork, tense client meetings, worn suits that never fit right. Still, I loved it. The challenges made me sharper. While many lawyers chased big-name cases, I felt drawn to the quiet ones. Families tangled in custody battles, mothers trying to keep their children safe. One day, I promised myself I'd open my own firm and specialize in helping people who didn't have the money or the voice to fight back. That dream was the heartbeat behind every all-nighter, every class I dragged myself through after work. My parents lived only an hour away. Exactly where they'd always been. Same sturdy split-level home. Same green lawn. Same church every Sunday. Now retired, Mom Deborah filled her days with gardening and neighborhood gossip. Dad Edward, once a mechanic, spent mornings polishing tools he no longer used. Their lives revolved around Shannon, the creative genius, as they called her. At 40, she was still their golden child, a freelance event planner who treated every small wedding or birthday party like a red carpet premiere. She'd brag about her contracts as though she were running the Oscars. My parents soaked in every detail. Meanwhile, my achievements felt invisible. Growing up, Shannon was the restless one, always talking, laughing, gathering people. I was the quiet one, the bookworm who won debate trophies and straight-A report cards. If Shannon threw a neighborhood parade, she was praised for her initiative. If I aced my exams, I got a distracted "good job, honey. Shannon's got such spark," Mom used to gush. Dad would nod, smiling his easy smile. "That girl's going places." It took years for me to realize spark was just their word for favorite. When I chose law school, it wasn't about medals or money. It was about finally naming myself, showing I could build something without applause. The part-time master's program at UNC Charlotte was made for stubborn people like me. For 4 long years I lived in 2 worlds, mornings at the firm, evenings in the lecture hall, weekends in cramped coffee shops surrounded by highlighters and half-eaten granola bars. My alarms broke every dawn at 5:00 a.m. that I'd stumble out of bed whispering, "Just keep going." Some days I believed it. Friends invited me on weekend trips, sent photos from rooftop brunches, while I was buried beneath case law and contracts. My life was a rotation of deadlines, court filings, and professors who expected perfection. My parents knew how hard I was pushing. They just never seemed impressed. Whenever they called, Mom's voice carried that familiar undertone of impatience. "You're always so busy," she'd sigh, as if discipline were a flaw. "Shannon actually takes time for people." Meanwhile, Shannon flooded Instagram with sparkly photos from her events, tables draped in fabric, champagne flutes lined like soldiers. Mom and Dad would comment with heart emojis, drowning her feed with praised posts, usually about surviving midterms, barely earned a good job Tiffany before they scrolled on. The ironic thing? Shannon's life wasn't glamorous at all. Her major contracts were often low-budget jobs, but she knew how to advertise herself. My parents didn't care about scale. They loved her. Shined I could brief a high-stakes case, and still be the dull one. Those 4 years were torture laced with purpose. Sleep vanished, so did soft edges. I learned to function on caffeine and willpower, drafting legal essays until my fingers cramped. I missed birthdays, holidays, and more first dates than I could count, but each time exhaustion threatened to crush me, I saw one image burning in my mind, walking that stage while my parents stood clapping, their pride finally genuine. That hope kept every cell in my body moving. Yet, even during that climb, Shannon's voice was always nearby, cheerful and careless, the living reminder of everything they adored. She'd call just to fill the silence with talk of her projects. "You wouldn't believe this couple's taste," she'd say mid-laugh. They wanted origami centerpieces. "Origami, Tiff. Can you imagine that?" Once, over coffee, she flipped her hair back and looked at me with amused innocence. "I don't know how you do it, Tiffany. All that studying sounds miserable. I'd rather be out making things happen." Her words stung, but I brushed them off. She didn't understand what it meant to build something lasting, something bigger than a one-off event. But my parents bought into her hype. They'd drive into Charlotte for her client meetings or help her set up for events, while my requests for a quick visit during exam season were met with excuses. "We're tied up with Shannon's latest project," Dad would say. "You know how busy she gets." I tried not to let it get to me. I really did. Focused on my goal. Finished the degree. Passed the bar. Opened my own practice. I saved every extra dollar from my paycheck, building a nest egg of $60,000 to fund my dream. It wasn't easy. Charlotte's cost of living isn't cheap. Law school tuition ate up most of my disposable income, but I was determined to make it work. I told myself that once I had that degree in hand, things would change. My parents would see what I'd accomplished, and maybe, just maybe, they'd stop putting Shannon on a pedestal. Looking back, I realized how naive I was. I thought a piece of paper would shift decades of favoritism. I thought my hard work would speak louder than Shannon's showy charm. But as the month ticked by and graduation day approached, a small part of me started to doubt, would they really show up for me? Or would Shannon find a way to steal the spotlight again? 6 months before graduation, I started planning what I hoped would be a day I'd never forget. I wanted Mom and Dad, Deborah and Edward Gordon, to see me walk across the stage, to feel the weight of what I'd achieved after 4 years of law school. I called Mom on a quiet Sunday afternoon, catching her as she sorted through old photo albums. "Mom, my graduation is May 15th at 2 p.m., I said, voice tinged with excitement. "I really want you and Dad there. It means a lot to me." She paused, then said, "That sounds wonderful, Tiffany. We'll put it on the calendar." I called Dad next, his voice rough from a long day in the garage. "Got it, Tiffany. Sounds good," he said. Their words felt like a promise. I held on to them, imagining their proud faces in the crowd. I spent weeks scouring Charlotte for the perfect restaurant for a celebratory dinner. After the ceremony, I settled on Dolce Vita, a small Italian place downtown with warm lighting and homemade ravioli. Tea cost $300 to reserve a table for 4, including myself. A splurge. But I told myself it was worth it for a milestone like this. I booked it with my credit card, pushing aside the slight sting of the expense. Then I bought a dress, an emerald green sheath that cost $200. Simple but elegant, perfect for wearing under my gown and for dinner afterward. I even made a hair appointment at a salon near my apartment. A rare treat for someone who lived in practical sweaters and jeans. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of joy instead of the usual grind. I sent my parents an email with every detail. Daytime auditorium location, link to parking instructions on the university's website. "I can't wait for you to see me graduate," I wrote, adding a hopeful smiley face. Mom replied the next day, "So proud of you, Tiffany. Looking forward to it." Dad's response, "Sure. Thanks for the info. See you then." I read those messages over and over, picturing them clapping as I accepted my master's degree in LWIT. Felt like the finish line was finally in sight. Weeks before the big day, that hope flickered. I was at my desk, reviewing a client's custody agreement, when my phone pinged with a text from Shannon. "Hey, I'm throwing a small party on May 15th to celebrate a new contract. Just landed a $10,000 wedding gig. You should come by after work." My stomach twisted. May 15th was my graduation date. I told Shannon the date months ago over coffee, When I was buzzing about finishing my degree, had she really forgotten? Or was something else going on? I called her right away, fingers gripping the phone. "Shannon, your party's on my graduation day," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I told you the date. Can you move it to another weekend?" Her response came fast, light, and careless. "Oh, Tiffany, I totally forgot. But it's not a big deal, right? It's just a ceremony. My party's for a huge career move. And I've got clients who can only make it that day." Her words hit hard like a door slamming shut. Just a ceremony. 4 years of late nights, skipped vacations, endless case law, reduced to nothing that I tried to reason with her. "Shannon, this is my master's degree. It's important to me. Can't you pick another day?" She sighed like I was making things difficult. "Tiffany, relax. I already sent invites, and it's too late to change. Besides, Mom and Dad can probably do both. It'll work out." She ended the call. My throat tightened with frustration. "Do both?" My ceremony was at 2 p.m. Her party started at 4 o'clock across town. It didn't add up that I'd hoped my parents would prioritize me, but Shannon's breezy confidence made me doubt. Was she trying to pull their attention away, like she always did with her flashy events? I didn't have proof, but the thought lingered, sharp and unsettling. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling of my apartment that I'd spent months imagining my parents in the audience. Their faces lit up as I walked across the stage. Now, I wasn't so sure. Shannon's party, her so-called huge career move, felt like a shadow creeping over my moment that I told myself they'd show up, that they wouldn't let me down, but a quiet doubt gnawed at me, whispering that I might be wrong. The morning of graduation started with a quiet buzz of anticipation in my chest that I woke at dawn, too restless to sleep. Knowing this was the moment I'd worked 4 years to reach, that I slipped into the emerald green dress I'd bought just for today. Its smooth fabric, a reminder of how much this milestone meant. Over it, I pulled on my black graduation gown, pinned my cap in place, and checked my reflection. The tassels weighed gently, a symbol of every late night and missed weekend I'd poured into my master's degree in law. I took a steadying breath, telling myself this day would be everything I'd hoped, no matter what. I arrived at the campus auditorium just after 1 p.m., blending into the crowd of graduates. In their identical black gowns, the air hummed with excitement. Classmates posing for photos with families, parents holding flowers, siblings waving balloons. I scanned the faces around me, searching for Mom or Dad, clinging to the hope that they'd show up despite Shannon's party. Maybe they'd chosen me this time, I thought, holding on to their vague promises, but as I moved through the lineup, gripping my name card, I saw no sign of them. My stomach tightened, but I pushed the doubt down, focusing on the moment that I'd earned this degree. I was going to walk that stage. The ceremony began at 2. With graduates filing into the familiar strains of pomp and circumstance. I took my place in the alphabetical lineup, eyes darting to the audience. The seats were packed, faces blurring under the bright lights, but none were my parents. I kept looking, telling myself they could be late, maybe stuck in traffic or circling for parking. But as the university president spoke about perseverance and new chapters, a cold realization settled in. They weren't there. They'd chosen Shannon's party over my graduation. When my name was called, Tiffany Gordon, Master of Laws with honors, I crossed the stage, heels steady despite the ache in my chest. I shook the dean's hand, took my diploma case, and moved my tassel from right to left. The applause was polite, the same for every graduate, but it felt empty, like it belonged to someone else's moment. No one shouted my name. No familiar cheers broke through. I forced a smile for the photographer, but the loneliness was crushing. This was my triumph, and I was facing it alone. Back at my seat, I clapped automatically for other graduates, my mind spinning. I'd given my parents every detail, date, time, location. I'd practically begged them to come. Why weren't they here? Shannon's party, her $10,000 wedding contract, couldn't possibly outshine this. The doubt I'd felt after talking to her weeks ago sharpened, cutting deeper. Had they ever meant to show up? Or was her spotlight always going to win? After the ceremony, graduates spilled onto the lawn, families reuniting in a burst of hugs and laughter. I stood on the sidelines, diploma case heavy in my hands, watching parents embrace their kids, snap proud photos. I felt like an outsider in my own victory. I pulled out my phone, hoping for a text from Mom or an apology, an explanation. Anything. There was nothing. Out of habit, I opened Instagram, scrolling through posts from classmates with their families. Then I froze. Shannon had posted a photo an hour ago, right during my ceremony. It showed Mom and Dad at her house, Raising wine glasses in a toast with a small group. Caption: celebrating my big contract win with my favorite people. Red heart, my breath caught. They were there, at Shannon's party, smiling like my graduation didn't matter. That I zoomed in, seeing Mom's proud smile, Dad's arm around her. The hurt hit like a wave, raw and overwhelming, stealing the air from my lungs. But another feeling stirred, cold and sharp: suspicion. Shannon knew my graduation date that I told her months ago. Why had she picked today for her party? It wasn't just a coincidence that I'd been climbing in my legal career, planning to open my own practice, and she'd always seemed uneasy about it, like my success was a threat. Was this her way of keeping the focus on her? Of pushing my moment into the shadows? I shoved my phone into my purse, hands shaking. That I tried to hold on to the pride of my degree, the years of work it represented. That I posed for a few photos with classmates, forcing a smile as they chatted about family plans. But that Instagram post burned in my mind, a wound I couldn't ignore. That I headed to my car, the diploma case heavier than it should have been. I'd planned a dinner at Dolce Vita, but now I wasn't sure I could face it alone. Something felt wrong, and I was starting to think Shannon had planned it that way. Leaving campus, the diploma case on the passenger seat felt heavier than it should, weighing down the hollow moment I just lived through. During the ceremony, I'd been too busy crossing the stage and forcing smiles to check my phone. Merging onto the highway toward my apartment, I glanced down, expecting silence. Instead, my chest tightened. A text from Mom glowed on the screen. We need to talk urgently. Below it, 30 missed calls from Dad. All within the past hour. My grip on the steering wheel tightened as a swell of dread and confusion rose inside me. What had happened? I pulled over to a gas station, pulse racing, and called Dad back. Dad, what's going on? I asked, voice unsteady. His reply came fast, strained with panic. Tiffany, it's Shannon. She fell at her party down the stairs. She's hurt bad. In the hospital now. We need you here. My mind spun. Shannon hurt. The image of Mom and Dad toasting at her party, captured on Instagram, flashed in my head, reigniting the sting of their absence. Which hospital? I asked, trying to focus. He gave me the address. Carolina's Medical Center, 10 minutes away. I hung up, torn between worry and the raw hurt still burning in my chest. I drove to the hospital, the Charlotte skyline fading into dusk as my thoughts churned. Part of me wanted to turn around, to let them handle whatever mess Shannon had caused, but another part, the one still tied to family despite everything, pushed me forward. I parked and rushed to the emergency wing, my gown still folded in the back seat. In the waiting area, I found Mom and Dad, their faces pale and tense. Mom, Dad, what happened? I asked, voice sharper than I meant. Mom's hands twisted a tissue, eyes red. Tiffany, thank God you're here. Shannon was drinking at her party, celebrating that new contract. She tripped on the stairs, fell hard. The doctors say she's got a broken femur and a mild concussion. She needs surgery. $50,000, maybe more. We don't have that kind of money. Dad nodded, voice low. Her freelance work doesn't come with good insurance, Tiffany. We're out of options. Can you help? I froze, their words hitting like a cold wave. $50,000. I had $60,000 saved for my law practice. Every cent scraped from years of careful budgeting. They were asking me to give up my dream for Shannon, the sister who'd planned her party on my graduation day. You're asking me to pay? I said, voice shaking. After you didn't show up for my ceremony, you were at her party smiling for photos while I stood alone on that stage? Mom flinched, voice breaking. Tiffany, we wanted to be there. But Shannon said her party was critical for her career. She said it was a one-time chance to impress clients, that your ceremony was just a formality. We thought you'd understand. Her words cut deeper than the empty seats had. A formality. I stared at her, anger flaring. Shannon said that? She knew it was my graduation day. I told her months ago. Why would she call it a formality? Mom hesitated, eyes dropping. She said her contract was more important, that we needed to support her career. We believed her. My blood ran cold. Shannon had known exactly what my graduation meant to me. This wasn't an oversight. It felt calculated, like she'd planned to steal my moment. I pulled out my phone, hands trembling, remembering a message Mom had forwarded weeks ago, one I'd skimmed during finals. I opened my email app, scrolled through my inbox, and found an email from Shannon to my parents, with me copied by mistake. My party is a huge career move, it read. Tiffany's graduation is just a formality. She won't mind if you skip it to support me. The words burned into me, undeniable proof. Mom, you sent me this, I said, holding up my phone. Shannon told you to skip my graduation. She planned this on purpose. Mom's face crumpled, hands covering her mouth. Tiffany, I didn't realize. We thought she was just excited about her contract. We're so sorry. Dad stepped closer, voice pleading. We made a mistake, Tiffany. But Shannon needs this surgery. Please, you're our only hope. I stood there, hospital lights buzzing overhead, torn between the family I tried to please and the betrayal I couldn't unsee. Shannon's email wasn't a slip. It was a deliberate move to keep my parents' focus on her, to dim my light, and now they were asking me to sacrifice my savings, my future, for her. The air felt thick, their eyes heavy on me, waiting for an answer, but all I could hear was my own heartbeat, pounding with years of being pushed aside, standing in the hospital waiting room, with Mom's apologies echoing and Shannon's email burning in my mind. I felt the weight of their betrayal heavier than ever. Mom's pleading eyes, Dad's desperate voice. They were asking me to give up my future for the sister who deliberately tried to overshadow me. $50,000 for Shannon's surgery. It was nearly everything I'd saved. $60,000. Every penny set aside for my dream of opening my own law practice. I stood frozen, the hum of hospital lights amplifying the storm inside me. Could I really do this for a family that had chosen her over me? I took a deep breath, hands clenching into fists. I'll pay for the surgery, I said, voice low but steady. But this is the last thing I'll ever do for this family. Mom gasped, hand reaching for me. Tiffany, please. I cut her off, shaking my head. No, Mom. You made your choice. Shannon made hers. I'm done. Dad's face fell. He stayed silent, shoulders slumping. I turned away, unable to look at them, and walked to the hospital's billing office. I arranged a bank transfer for $50,000, watching my savings, the foundation of my future, drain away with a few keystrokes. It hurt, but not as much as the years of being pushed aside. That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at the confirmation email from Dolce Vita for the celebratory dinner I'd planned. I'd pictured my parents there, toasting to my master's degree. But now the thought felt hollow. I called the restaurant and canceled the reservation, voice flat as I explained I wouldn't need it anymore. The server hesitated. I'm sorry, ma'am. I hung up, a strange calm settling over me. That dinner was supposed to mark a new chapter, but I realized I didn't need their approval to start it. I needed to let go. The next morning, I blocked my mother's number, my father's, and Shannon's. I removed them from my email contacts, unfollowed them on social media, and deleted their messages. It wasn't just about anger. It was about protecting myself. For years, I'd chased their recognition, believing my achievements would finally make them see me. But Shannon's email, her deliberate attempt to dim my light, and my parents' willingness to go along with it, showed me the truth. Their love came with conditions, and I was done trying to meet them. 2 weeks later, I packed up my apartment in Charlotte. I'd been researching cities for months, looking for a fresh start where I could build my law practice on my terms. Miami felt right, vibrant, growing. With the demand for lawyers specializing in family law like me, I signed a lease for a small office space downtown, using the last $10,000 of my savings to cover the deposit and basic equipment. It was a risk, but it was mine. I hired a moving company, loaded my belongings into a truck, and drove south, leaving Charlotte behind. The skyline faded in my rearview mirror, and with it, the weight of my family's expectations. In Miami, I threw myself into work. I took on clients, single mothers fighting for custody, families navigating messy estates. I built a reputation for being tough but fair. My office was small, mismatched furniture, a coffee machine that barely worked. But it was mine. Every case I won, every client I helped, reminded me that my worth didn't come from my parents' approval or Shannon's shadow. It came from the years I'd spent proving myself to myself. My parents tried to reach out in those first few months. Mom left voicemails I never listened to. Dad sent emails I marked as spam. I heard through a distant cousin that they were struggling, cut off not just from me, but from other relatives who'd heard about their favoritism. Family gatherings grew tense, aunts and uncles whispering about how they'd chosen Shannon's small-time contract over my master's degree. Their social circle shrank, their pride in Shannon no longer enough to fill the void I'd left. Shannon faced her own fallout. A client at her party, a wedding planner who'd seen her stumble and fall, spread the story in Charlotte's tight-knit event industry. Word got around that Shannon was unprofessional, drinking too much at her own event. She lost a $15,000 contract for a corporate gala, a blow to her already shaky freelance career. With her broken femur and concussion, she couldn't work for months, relying on savings that quickly dwindled. I didn't feel joy at her struggles, but I didn't feel guilt either. She'd made her choices, just as I'd made mine. Looking back, I see now that my graduation wasn't just about a degree. It was about learning who I am when the people I love most let me down. For years, I thought their approval defined me, that if I worked hard enough they'd see my worth. But standing alone in Miami, building my practice, I realized the truth. My value doesn't depend on them. It's in the choices I make, the boundaries I set, the life I create. I paid for Shannon's surgery, not because I owed her, but because I wanted to close that chapter with no regrets. Cutting them off wasn't easy, but it was freedom. If you've ever had to stand up for yourself, to walk away from people who couldn't see your worth, I want to hear your story. How did you find the strength to choose yourself? Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Your voice matters, so does your story. Subscribe for more real stories about finding your own path.